Hello, sir. My mom has a ring just like yours. Words from a black girl that shocked a billionaire. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The room was filled with the soft hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, and the occasional laughter that echoed against the walls of the grand ballroom. It was one of those rare evenings where the rich and powerful gathered, a sea of expensive suits, elegant dresses, and polished smiles. Samuel Whitmore, billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of a global tech empire, stood near the center of the room, his posture impeccable as always. He was a man used to attention, to admiration, to being the center of every conversation. His smile was perfect, his presence commanding. But tonight, something felt different. His eyes drifted over the crowd, scanning faces, but there was an unease gnawing at him that he couldn't quite shake. That's when he saw her. A small girl, no older than 8, standing by the door, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. She was alone, her clothes a little out of place among the wealth and grandeur surrounding her. Her dark eyes seemed to search for something, or someone. The crowd didn't seem to notice her, too wrapped up in their own conversations, but Samuel's gaze lingered on her. He took a slow step forward, his curiosity piqued. The girl was standing just at the threshold of the ballroom, as if unsure of whether she was allowed in. And then, she spoke. "Hello, sir. My mom has a ring just like yours," she said, her voice small but clear enough to carry across the room. The words struck Samuel like a lightning bolt. His body froze. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the way she said them, with certainty, with an almost eerie calmness. He turned to face her fully, his heart suddenly pounding. How could she know about his ring? The same ring he wore every day, his late wife's heirloom. How could this child know that? He looked down at her, his mind racing, and before he could say anything, the crowd around them seemed to fall silent. The music faded into the background, and all eyes were on this strange encounter. The little girl, who seemed so out of place, stood there with a quiet confidence that Samuel couldn't understand. She didn't seem afraid, didn't seem overwhelmed by the weight of the situation. Instead, she just looked up at him with those wide, innocent eyes, waiting. Samuel opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. He wanted to ask her how she knew, but instead, he found himself taking a step closer to her. The silence was heavy, pressing down on him, but something inside him urged him to listen, to understand. The tension in the room was palpable, but the girl didn't flinch. She simply stood there, waiting for him to make the next move. "Are you sure?" Samuel asked, his voice shaky with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. The girl nodded, her small hand reaching into the pocket of her worn-out jacket. "I have a picture of her," she said softly, pulling out a faded photograph. She handed it to him without hesitation. Samuel took the picture, his fingers trembling as he examined it. It was an old photo, black and white, of a woman he hadn't seen in years. His heart skipped a beat. The woman in the photograph was his late wife. At least, it looked like her. But there was something else. A child stood beside her, barely noticeable at first, but now it was all too clear. It was her, the little girl standing before him now. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. His mind struggled to comprehend it. The girl, the ring, the photograph. All of it made sense now, but he still couldn't bring himself to believe it. She was his daughter. The daughter he never knew existed. "Who are you?" Samuel whispered, his voice barely audible. The girl looked up at him again, her eyes holding his gaze with a depth he hadn't expected. "I'm Anna," she said simply. "I think I'm your daughter." The room around them seemed to disappear as Samuel's world tilted on its axis. He looked at Anna, then back at the photograph. The truth he'd never known, was staring him right in the face. And in that moment, everything changed. He didn't know what to say, but he knew one thing for sure. His life would never be the same again. The air felt thick with tension as Samuel stood frozen in front of Anna, the little girl who had just claimed to be his daughter. The ballroom, once filled with the hum of laughter and soft music, now seemed to stand still, all eyes on the unfolding moment. Samuel's hands shook slightly as he clutched the photograph Anna had handed him. He had been prepared for anything tonight, but not for this. A child. His child. He stared at the photo again, his mind racing to make sense of the sudden revelation. The woman in the photograph, smiling softly in a vintage portrait, was unmistakably his late wife, Emily. But the child beside her, so small, so fragile-looking, was Anna. A flood of emotions hit him all at once: confusion, disbelief, and something deeper, something that felt like guilt. How could this be? How had he not known? He looked up from the photo, his eyes meeting Anna's again. She was standing there, calm but waiting, her small face filled with an expression that suggested both hope and uncertainty. Samuel swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "How is this possible?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. Anna's eyes didn't waver. "My mom, she never told me who my dad was. But I remember her talking about you sometimes. She said you were a good man." Her words, so simple and innocent, struck Samuel harder than he expected. A good man. He wasn't sure he could call himself that anymore. He'd been so wrapped up in his world of business, his empire, his own ambitions. He had never even thought to look back at the life he left behind. "Why didn't you tell me?" Samuel asked, his voice suddenly sounding more urgent, more desperate. "Why now? Why didn't anyone come to me sooner?" Anna hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "I didn't know who to ask," she said softly. "But I found a letter from my mom. She wrote about you. She said you might be able to help me one day." Samuel's heart sank. The letter. He had no idea. He had no idea that someone had been trying to reach out to him, that someone had been trying to connect the dots of a past he had buried. He looked at Anna, really looked at her this time, and for the first time, he saw a reflection of Emily in her eyes. It was a strange, haunting feeling, seeing the face of someone he had lost years ago in the form of this small child. He took a slow, shaky breath and crouched down to Anna's level. "I need to know more," he said, his voice gentler now. "I need to understand. Why are you here? What do you want from me?" Anna looked at him for a moment, her brow furrowing. "I don't want anything from you," she said quietly. "I just wanted to find you. I didn't want to be alone anymore." Samuel's heart twisted at her words. She was alone. All these years, she had been alone, without a father, without anyone to look after her. And he had been blind to it all. He reached out and touched her shoulder gently, as if to reassure himself that she was real, that this moment was real. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise." Anna's face softened, and for the first time, she gave him a small, tentative smile. It was a smile filled with hope and vulnerability, as though she wasn't sure whether to believe him, but she wanted to. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not turning me away." Samuel stood up, his mind still spinning. He needed answers. He needed to understand what had happened, why Emily had kept this from him, and how Anna had ended up here, in this grand ballroom, of all places. He looked back at the crowd, still watching from the edges of the room. They were all waiting for him to react, to do something. But all he could do was stand there, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions that had just been unleashed. "Come with me," he said finally, turning back to Anna. "We'll go somewhere quiet. I'll get you the answers you need." Anna nodded silently, stepping closer to him. As they walked through the crowd, Samuel's mind raced. He couldn't shake the image of Emily, of the life he had abandoned, of the child who had been left behind in the shadows. But one thing was certain now. This was his chance to make things right. He couldn't undo the past, but he could start by being there for Anna, the daughter he never knew he had. As Samuel led Anna through the grand hallway of his mansion, the weight of the moment began to settle on him. The sounds of the bustling ballroom faded into the background, replaced by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the polished marble floors. Anna walked beside him, her small figure looking out of place in the opulence of his world. But there was something about her that seemed to belong in the very air that surrounded him. Despite the uncertainty and confusion that had flooded his mind since their meeting, Samuel couldn't help but feel a strange sense of responsibility for this child. As they reached a quiet, private sitting room, he motioned for her to sit on the couch. Anna hesitated for a moment before sitting down, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the vast space. Samuel could see her unease, her discomfort in a world so different from the one she had known. He sat down across from her, still trying to process everything. So, Anna, he began, his voice softer than before. Tell me more about your mother. What was she like? Anna bit her lip, clearly choosing her words carefully. She was kind, she said, her voice a little shaky. She always made sure I had enough to eat, even if it meant going without herself. She never really talked about you, but I remember her saying that you were important to her. Samuel nodded slowly, trying to hold back the guilt that threatened to overtake him. He had been so wrapped up in his own world that he had no idea what Emily had gone through. I don't understand, he said, looking at Anna. If she knew me, why didn't she tell me about you? Why didn't she reach out? Anna shrugged slightly, her small hands clasped tightly together. I don't know, she said quietly. Maybe she didn't want to hurt you. She always said that you had your own life, and she didn't want to interfere. She said she would tell you when the time was right. But she trailed off, her eyes glancing down at the floor. Samuel sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. He had never thought of Emily like that. He had always assumed she had moved on, that she had let go of whatever had happened between them. But now, hearing Anna speak, he realized how little he truly understood about the woman he had loved. She left me, Samuel said, his voice heavy with regret. She left me without saying goodbye. Anna looked up at him then, her eyes soft, but full of empathy. She didn't leave you, sir. She just didn't want you to think she was asking for anything. She didn't want to cause you pain. Samuel felt a pang in his chest at her words. It was clear that Emily had tried to protect him, but at what cost? She had protected him from the truth, from the daughter he never knew existed. Do you think she wanted me to be in your life? Samuel asked, his voice almost a whisper. Anna met his gaze steadily. I think she wanted you to be happy, she said. And she thought, maybe you would be happier without her. But now, I think she would want you to know me. I think she would want you to be a part of my life. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken emotions. Samuel couldn't help but wonder how much he had missed, how much he had lost because of his own pride and distance. He had been too focused on building his empire, too consumed with success, to notice the people who truly mattered. And now, here was Anna, a living piece of his past, the daughter he had never known, waiting for him to accept her. Samuel stood up, his mind still whirling. I'm sorry, he said, his voice strained. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I didn't know. Anna stood up as well, a small but genuine smile playing at the corner of her lips. You can still be there now, she said softly. You can still help me. We can still be a family, if you want to. Samuel's heart felt heavy, but for the first time in years, it also felt full. The truth was staring him in the face, and for the first time in a long time, he was ready to face it. He walked over to Anna, his eyes locked with hers, and he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. I'll be there for you, he said, his voice steady. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise I won't let you go. Anna's eyes brightened with the faintest glimmer of hope. Thank you, she whispered. Samuel nodded, a weight lifting from his chest. There was still so much to learn, so much to understand, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Together, they could face whatever came next. And that thought, that simple promise, was enough to make him believe that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't lost everything after all. Samuel sat in his large leather chair, staring at the paperwork scattered across his desk. His office, like the rest of his mansion, was immaculate, luxurious and cold. His mind, however, was far from organized. It had been days since Anna's revelation, and the questions that plagued him had only grown louder. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the small girl who had walked into his life, a stranger, yet somehow not. The past week had been a blur, full of meetings, decisions, and distractions, but all he could think about was her. Anna had moved in with him, but the process was far from simple. Their conversations had been tentative at first, small exchanges about her school, her day, her favorite food. But Samuel could tell she was still uncertain, still waiting for him to prove that he meant what he had said. The weight of being her father, of taking on the responsibility he had ignored for so many years, pressed down on him. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his assistant. Mr. Whitmore, your daughter is here for the meeting with the lawyer. Samuel sighed, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 3 p.m. He had forgotten they were meeting with a lawyer today to discuss Anna's legal status, adoption, custody, all of it. He had promised to handle it. But now that the time had come, The reality of the situation hit him in a way he hadn't expected. He wasn't sure what to expect from the lawyer or how Anna would react. It was one thing to tell her she was his daughter, but it was another to make it official. Standing up, Samuel made his way to the sitting room where Anna was waiting. As he entered, he found her sitting on the couch, her legs crossed, a book in her lap. She looked up when he walked in, her expression unreadable. "Ready for the meeting?" he asked softly, trying to sound reassuring. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed the book and set it on the coffee table, her hands resting in her lap. For a moment, she just stared at him. Then, in a small voice, she said, "Are you sure this is what you want to do? I mean, you don't have to. I don't want to make things hard for you." The words hit Samuel harder than he expected. "I'm not doing this because I feel like I have to, Anna," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "I'm doing this because I want to. I want to be your father. I want to make sure you have everything you need and that you're taken care of." Anna didn't look convinced, but she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice quiet. "But what if things get weird? What if they don't work out? What if you don't want me anymore?" Samuel's heart ached at the uncertainty in her voice. She had been through so much already, and the fear of rejection had clearly settled deep inside her. He moved to sit beside her on the couch, looking at her with sincerity. "Anna, I'm not going anywhere. I know it's not easy. It's going to take time, but I'm here. And I'm not going to turn my back on you." She looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, he thought she might say something, but then the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the lawyer. Anna stood up, her expression still uncertain, but she didn't pull away. Samuel stood as well, taking a deep breath. "Come on," he said, offering her his hand. "Let's go get this over with." They walked to the door together, and as Samuel opened it, the lawyer stepped inside. He was a middle-aged man, dressed in a sharp suit, with a clipboard in his hand. "Mr. Whitmore, Miss Anna," he said with a smile, extending his hand. "Shall we get started?" Samuel nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He glanced at Anna, who was still holding his hand. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and there was a flicker of understanding between them. This was the moment. This was where things would change. As they sat down around the table, the lawyer began to explain the process of adoption, the steps they would need to take, the paperwork that needed to be filed. Samuel listened intently, but his mind kept drifting back to Anna. He could see how nervous she was, how her small fingers were gripping the edge of the table. She was trying to stay calm, but Samuel could feel the tension in her body. "Anna," he said softly, reaching out to gently touch her hand. She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He smiled at her, and she returned the smile, her lips trembling just slightly. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice firm. "We're doing this together." The lawyer continued explaining the details, but Samuel barely heard him. All he could think about was how, in that moment, everything was changing. Anna was no longer a stranger to him. She was his daughter. And no matter what the future held, Samuel knew one thing for certain. He was going to be there for her, every step of the way. The days following the lawyer's visit were a blur for Samuel. He had been caught up in meetings, phone calls, and endless decisions. But in the back of his mind, Anna's words echoed. What if things get weird? It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of abandonment and fear. Samuel couldn't stop thinking about her, about how she must feel in this strange new world. She was adjusting to a life that was so different from what she had known, and he was still trying to catch up to the reality of what it meant to be her father. The mansion, the luxury, the vast rooms filled with treasures and memories. They were all hers now, but in many ways, it felt like she was still an outsider here. Samuel had tried his best to make her feel welcome. He'd shown her around the house, introduced her to the staff, and even arranged a tutor for her to keep up with schoolwork. But every time he looked at her, he saw the uncertainty in her eyes, the wariness in her small gestures. He knew she was still waiting for him to prove that he wouldn't leave, just like everyone else in her life had. He wanted to make her feel at home, but he wasn't sure how. One morning, after breakfast, Samuel found himself in his study, sorting through a pile of documents. He'd been working late the night before and had barely gotten any sleep. His mind was foggy, but as he glanced up from the paperwork, he saw Anna standing at the doorframe, hesitating. She was holding something in her hands, something small, wrapped in a piece of fabric. Samuel set the papers aside and stood up, a sense of unease creeping into his chest. "Anna?" he asked, his voice gentle. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped into the room, looking at him with a mixture of determination and uncertainty. I found this," she said, her voice quiet. She unwrapped the fabric, revealing a small wooden box. The wood was worn, the edges chipped, but the box itself was intricately carved with delicate designs. Samuel's heart skipped a beat when he saw it. He recognized it immediately. It was his mother's. He had seen the box 1,000 times growing up, but he hadn't thought about it in years. It had been passed down through generations in his family, a keepsake, something his mother had always kept close. It was the kind of thing you held on to when you couldn't hold on to anything else. "Where did you find this?" Samuel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Anna looked down at the box, her fingers running along the worn edges. "It was in the attic," she said, her voice soft. "I was exploring and found it hidden behind some old boxes. It looked like it was important." Samuel took a deep breath, his mind racing. "This belonged to my mother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out and gently took the box from her hands, his fingers lingering on the smooth wood. It's a family heirloom. I didn't realize it was still here." Anna watched him closely, her eyes searching his face. "What's inside?" she asked. Samuel hesitated for a moment, then carefully opened the box. Inside, there was a small photograph, yellowed with age, of a woman he hadn't seen in years. His mother, yes, but also a woman he had forgotten, his mother holding a small baby in her arms. The baby was wrapped in a blanket, its face obscured, but it was unmistakable. The child was him. The photograph had been taken long before he'd left for college, long before his life had taken him down a path so different from the one his parents had imagined for him. His hand shook as he held the picture, the past rushing back in a flood of memories. He remembered the way his mother had looked at him when he was younger, how proud she had been of him, how much she had hoped he would carry on the family legacy. But he had left it all behind. He had left her behind. "Why do you still have this?" Anna asked, her voice breaking through his thoughts. He looked at her, startled by the question. I don't know," he said, his voice rough. "I guess I never thought about it. My mother gave this to me when I was just a kid. She wanted me to hold on to it, to remember who I was. I didn't." The words were hard to say, but they were true. He hadn't kept the memory of his family, of his past, close. Instead, he had buried it under the weight of his ambition. "I never really thought about where I came from," Samuel continued, his eyes still fixed on the photograph. "But now I realize how much I've lost." Anna was silent for a moment. Then she stepped closer to him. "You didn't lose it," she said softly. "You just forgot about it. But now you can remember. You can make up for what you missed." Samuel looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. She was right. He had lost so much, but it wasn't too late to find it again. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Anna smiled up at him, her eyes soft with understanding. "We can do this together," she said. "We can make it work." Samuel felt a tear slip down his cheek, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel it. He had found something he thought he had lost forever, and it was standing right in front of him. He reached out and gently pulled Anna into an embrace. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'll never leave you again." Anna hugged him back tightly, her small arms wrapped around his waist. In that moment, everything felt like it was falling into place. The past, the present, the future, they were all connected now, woven together by the bond they were beginning to build. Samuel knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was finally ready to face whatever came next. Together. The days after Samuel's emotional conversation with Anna passed in a blur of small, but significant changes. The mansion no longer felt so cold, so distant. There was a warmth that lingered in the corners, a comfort that wasn't there before. Anna had become part of this world, not just a visitor, not just a shadow from a forgotten past. She was here to stay, and for the first time in years, Samuel felt like he had a purpose beyond his empire. Yet, despite the growing bond between them, Samuel knew there was still so much to address. The past was still a looming presence, and they had only scratched the surface of the complicated history between him and Emily. One evening, as the last rays of daylight slipped through the grand windows of the sitting room, Anna entered quietly. She had a book in her hands, but her face was serious, her steps more tentative than usual. Samuel looked up from his work. "Everything okay?" he asked, pushing aside the pile of papers in front of him. Anna nodded, but there was a hesitation in her eyes. "I wanted to ask you something," she said, her voice small. Samuel sat back in his chair, feeling a twinge of worry. "Of course, anything." She took a deep breath and then spoke, her words slow, as though she was carefully choosing each one. "Do you think my mom would have wanted me to be here?" The question hit Samuel like a punch to the gut. It wasn't the question he was expecting, but it was the one he knew Anna needed to ask. She was still struggling to reconcile the life she had now with the memories of the mother she had lost. "I think," Samuel began, his voice steady but soft, "I think your mom would have wanted you to be happy. She would have wanted you to have a good life. And I know she would have wanted us to be here for you, even if she couldn't be." Anna nodded slowly, as if trying to process the weight of his words. She walked over to the couch and sat down, setting the book aside. "I don't remember much about her," Anna admitted, her voice tinged with sadness. "I just remember her voice, and sometimes I think I hear it, but then it goes away. I don't know what she would have wanted for me." Samuel's heart broke for her. He reached over and placed a hand on hers, offering a silent gesture of support. "I think she wanted the best for you, Anna. And I'm here now. I'll make sure you have everything you need. I won't let you down." Anna looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "I know, but I still don't understand. You've been so busy with your company, with everything. How do I fit into all of that?" Samuel was quiet for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. "You fit into everything," he said finally, his voice firm but full of emotion. "This company, this house, it means nothing if I don't have you in my life. You're my priority now, Anna. Nothing else matters more than that." Anna's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, she gave him a small, uncertain smile. "Thanks," she whispered. "I just want to make sure I'm not a burden." Samuel shook his head gently. "You could never be a burden. Your family." The words hung in the air, and Samuel realized just how true they were. He had spent so much of his life building his wealth, his legacy, and yet it all felt hollow without Anna. She wasn't a burden. She was the missing piece he didn't know he needed. The next day, Samuel took Anna to the park, just the two of them. He had noticed how she seemed to hesitate around the house, as though unsure of where she belonged. The park felt like a good place to start, a place to ease her into the idea of being part of his world. They walked together along the tree-lined paths, Anna quietly talking about her favorite books and the things she liked to do in her spare time. Samuel listened intently, asking questions and learning about her interests, the little things that made her who she was. As they sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, Samuel finally felt like he was starting to understand her. She was more than just a reflection of Emily. She was her own person, with her own dreams, her own fears. And he wanted to be there to help her chase those dreams, to ease her fears. "You know," Samuel said, breaking the silence, "you can ask me anything, anytime. You don't have to be afraid of what's going to happen next." Anna looked up at him, her expression serious. "What about when I don't know what I want?" she asked softly. "What if I don't know where I belong?" Samuel took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling over him. "I don't know all the answers, Anna, but I can promise you that I'm going to help you find your way. We're going to figure it out together." Anna smiled, a little more confidently this time. "I think I'd like that." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the park, Samuel felt a sense of peace that he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he realized that he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living, and Anna was the reason. They weren't just two people thrown together by fate. They were family, and Samuel would do whatever it took to protect that. Together, they would build something better, something lasting. A bond that would never be broken. Samuel walked through the grand hallways of the mansion, his footsteps echoing through the marble floors. The silence was unsettling, despite the wealth that surrounded him. The opulent chandeliers, the towering bookshelves, the expensive paintings on the walls. Everything had been designed to impress, but lately, Samuel had found it all lacking. It was hard to ignore the emptiness that seemed to seep into every corner of his life, an emptiness that no amount of money or luxury could fill. He had everything he could ever want, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The house, the business, the empire, it all seemed irrelevant in the face of the one thing he had been missing, a family. And Anna. He couldn't stop thinking about her. She had changed everything. She had come into his life so unexpectedly, so fiercely, that it almost felt like fate was pushing him in a new direction. But now, he was beginning to feel the weight of the responsibilities that came with it. He wasn't just her father in name. He was her protector, her guide. The past week had been difficult, both for him and for Anna. She was adjusting to this new life, but it was clear she still felt like an outsider. Samuel couldn't blame her. She was only just beginning to understand who he was and what his world entailed. They were still learning how to fit into each other's lives. It was hard, but Samuel had made a promise, and he was determined to keep it. Anna had opened up to him in small ways, but there were still walls between them. Samuel knew that for things to work, he had to understand her fully, and she had to trust him completely. That's why, when he received an invitation from a distant relative, a cousin who had always been a part of his family's business empire, he saw it as the perfect opportunity to bring Anna into his world in a different way. It wasn't just about his wealth anymore. It was about showing Anna who he was, and giving her the chance to meet people who could make her feel welcome in this strange new life. As they arrived at the family estate, Samuel felt the familiar weight of old expectations pressing down on him. The sprawling grounds, the elegant garden, and the imposing mansion all seemed to belong to a time when he had been different. A time when he had been part of something bigger, something that had shaped him into who he was today. But as he walked beside Anna, he realized how little of that mattered now. She was the one he cared about. She was the one who had come into his life and changed everything. They walked up the stone steps of the mansion, and the door was opened by his cousin, Margaret, who greeted them with a warm smile. "Samuel, it's so good to see you," she said, her eyes immediately falling on Anna. "And you must be Anna. It's lovely to meet you." Anna smiled nervously, her small hand gripping Samuel's. "Nice to meet you," she said softly, glancing up at Samuel for reassurance. Samuel squeezed her hand gently. "She's a bit shy," he explained. "She's still getting used to everything." Margaret nodded, understanding. "Of course. It's a big adjustment, but you're in good hands here. We're all family." As they walked inside, Anna marveled at the grandeur of the house, her eyes wide with awe. It was just as lavish as Samuel's mansion, with its golden chandeliers, polished marble floors, and high ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly above them. But despite the beauty of it all, Anna still looked out of place. Samuel could see it in the way she fidgeted with her sleeves, in the way she avoided making eye contact with the others. Margaret led them into the sitting room, where several family members were gathered. Samuel introduced Anna to his cousins, his aunt, and a few close family friends, but it was clear that Anna was uncomfortable. She wasn't used to the attention, to being surrounded by so many people who were all strangers to her. Samuel could feel her retreating into herself, her quiet demeanor a stark contrast to the lively conversations going on around them. He wanted to ease her discomfort, but he wasn't sure how. After a few moments, Margaret noticed Anna's unease and smiled warmly. "Why don't you two come with me?" she suggested. "I have something I think you'll enjoy." Samuel looked at Anna, who nodded hesitantly. "Go ahead," he encouraged her. "I'll be right behind you." Margaret led Anna down the hallway to a small, private room at the back of the house. It was a cozy space, filled with books and comfortable furniture, and the moment Anna stepped inside, she seemed to relax a little. Margaret gestured for Anna to sit on the couch and handed her a book from the shelf. "I thought you might enjoy this," she said. "It's one of my favorites." Anna took the book, her eyes scanning the cover before she glanced up at Margaret. "Thank you," she said quietly. Samuel stood in the doorway, watching them for a moment. He saw the way Margaret interacted with Anna, gentle, patient, and understanding, and he realized that Anna needed this. She needed people who would make her feel safe, who would help her find her place in this new world. It wasn't just about Samuel. It was about the support network he could build for her, people who would help her grow. Samuel stepped into the room and sat next to Anna. "You okay?" he asked softly. Anna looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "Yeah," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I think I am." He smiled back, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. This wasn't going to be easy, but they were taking the right steps. Together, they would figure it out. And with each new experience, Anna would see more of the world he was offering her, a world that was no longer a place of loneliness or uncertainty, but a place where she truly belonged. The next few weeks were filled with new routines and quiet moments of growth. Samuel had made an effort to keep Anna involved in everything, from family dinners to small outings around the city. The mansion, once a place of emptiness, had begun to feel more like a home. But no matter how much he tried, Samuel could feel the subtle tension between them, the lingering doubt that Anna still had in the back of her mind. She hadn't yet fully accepted this new life, and Samuel understood that. It wasn't just about bringing her into his world. It was about helping her find her place in it. One afternoon, Samuel was working in his office, his mind focused on the latest business proposals, when he heard a soft knock on the door. "Come in," he called, looking up from his paperwork. Anna stepped into the room, holding a small piece of paper in her hand. She looked nervous, as if she wasn't sure whether to interrupt him or not. Samuel smiled and motioned for her to come closer. "What's on your mind?" he asked. Anna hesitated for a moment before speaking. I wanted to show you something," she said softly, holding out the paper. Samuel reached for it, his curiosity piqued. As he unfolded the piece of paper, he saw that it was a drawing, carefully sketched, with delicate lines that showed a quiet, artistic hand. The drawing depicted a simple scene: a house with a garden, a swing hanging from a tree, and a figure sitting on the porch, looking out at the world. It was clear that Anna had put a lot of thought into it. "This is beautiful, Anna," Samuel said, his voice filled with admiration. Anna blushed and looked down at the ground. "I used to draw all the time when I was younger," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It helped me feel better, especially when I missed my mom." Samuel's heart clenched at her words. He had known that Anna's past was filled with loss and uncertainty, but hearing her talk about it so openly hit him harder than he expected. He set the drawing down on his desk and stood up, walking over to her. "You're very talented," he said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "And I'm glad you're sharing this with me." Anna looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and hesitation. "You really think it's good?" she asked, the vulnerability in her voice impossible to miss. Samuel smiled warmly. "I think it's wonderful. It's a beautiful way to express yourself." Anna's eyes softened, and for the first time in a while, she seemed at ease. "Thank you," she said quietly. "It means a lot to me." Samuel nodded, feeling a sense of pride swelling in his chest. It was a small moment, but it felt like a breakthrough. Anna was opening up to him, little by little, and that meant everything. As the days passed, Anna continued to spend time in the mansion, slowly adjusting to the rhythm of their new life. She took up drawing more often, and Samuel made sure to support her in every way he could. They spent evenings together, reading, talking, and simply being in each other's company. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. However, the true test came when Anna asked to visit her old neighborhood. Samuel had been expecting this moment. She hadn't forgotten where she came from, and it was only a matter of time before she would want to reconnect with the place that had once been her home. Samuel didn't know what to expect. Would it be too much for Anna? Would it remind her of the pain and loss she had endured? But he also knew that it was something she needed to do for herself. So, one Saturday afternoon, they set out together. They drove through the city, and as they reached the outskirts, Anna's grip on her seatbelt tightened. Samuel glanced at her, sensing the nervousness in her. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Anna nodded, though her expression was uncertain. "I think I am," she said softly, her eyes focused on the street ahead. They arrived in the area that Anna had once called home. Small, run-down houses lined the streets, and there was a feeling of neglect in the air. It was a far cry from the mansion Samuel had brought her to. Anna remained quiet as they walked through the neighborhood, her eyes scanning the familiar sights. It was clear she wasn't ready to face it all at once, but she wasn't running from it either. They stopped in front of an old, crumbling building, the one Anna had lived in with her mother before everything changed. Anna looked up at it, her gaze distant. "This is where we lived," she said quietly, almost to herself. Samuel stood beside her, offering silent support. "Do you want to go inside?" he asked. Anna shook her head. "No," she said, her voice steady now. "I just needed to see it. I needed to remember." Samuel placed a hand on her back, offering her a moment of quiet strength. He knew this wasn't easy for her, but he also knew that she had taken a huge step. She wasn't letting her past define her anymore. She was choosing to face it, to acknowledge it, and to move forward. I'm proud of you, Anna, Samuel said softly, his voice filled with emotion. You don't have to carry all of this alone. Not anymore. Anna looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mix of gratitude and relief. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. As they left the neighborhood behind and drove back to the mansion, Samuel felt a deep sense of pride. Anna was finding her place, and he was honored to be part of her journey. It wouldn't be easy, but together, they would build a future that was theirs to create. And in that moment, Samuel knew that he would do whatever it took to give Anna the life she deserved, a life full of love, hope, and the kind of family she had always longed for. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of changes and revelations for both Samuel and Anna. Samuel had always thought he understood responsibility, but now, with Anna in his life, he realized just how little he truly knew about what it meant to be a father. Every day, he learned something new about her, her hopes, her fears, the way she saw the world. And every day, the distance between them seemed to grow smaller. They had begun to settle into a new routine. Anna had started attending a new school nearby, one Samuel had personally chosen for her, ensuring it would offer both the academic excellence and the emotional support she needed. And though it was a struggle for Anna to find her footing in the unfamiliar environment, Samuel saw glimpses of her resilience, her determination to succeed, even when it seemed like the odds were stacked against her. But as the weeks passed, a new challenge arose, one that neither of them had anticipated. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Samuel returned home to find Anna sitting alone in the library. The room was quiet, save for the soft sound of the clock ticking on the wall. Anna sat at a table, a book open in front of her, but her eyes were distant, her focus clearly elsewhere. As Samuel stepped closer, he noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way she was gripping the edge of the table, as if holding on for dear life. Anna? He called softly, not wanting to startle her. She didn't look up immediately. Anna, are you all right? She blinked a few times, as if coming out of a daze, before finally meeting his gaze. Her face was pale, and Samuel immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Anna hesitated for a moment, then spoke in a low, almost inaudible voice. They're making fun of me at school. The kids. The words hit Samuel like a punch to the gut. He had known that adjusting to this new life would be difficult for Anna, but hearing it from her, hearing the pain in her voice, made everything feel so much more real. What are they saying? He asked, his throat tight. They call me names, Anna whispered, her eyes darting away from his. They say I don't belong here, that I don't fit in, that I'm just a charity case. They say I'm different. Samuel felt a surge of anger rise in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Anna needed him to be strong, to be the person she could rely on. He took a deep breath and walked over to her, sitting down beside her at the table. Anna, he said gently, placing his hand on hers. You belong here. You're not different. You're special, and you have every right to be here, just like anyone else. Anna looked at him, her eyes wide, as if she was unsure whether to believe him. But they don't see me like that, she said quietly. They don't understand. Samuel's heart broke for her. He could see how deeply the cruelty of the other kids had affected her, how much she just wanted to be accepted. People who don't understand you, he said softly, are the ones who are wrong, not you. You're strong, Anna. You've been through so much, and you're still standing. That takes courage. Anna's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and for a moment, Samuel wasn't sure if she would cry. But then, she wiped her eyes and shook her head. I don't know how to make them stop, she whispered. Samuel leaned in, his voice firm yet gentle. You don't have to make them stop, Anna. The only thing you need to do is be yourself. People like that, they'll never understand what you've been through, what it means to be strong. But the people who matter will see you for who you are, and that's what counts. He paused, then added, and I'm here. You don't have to do this alone. Anna looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. I don't want to be a burden, she said, almost too quietly. You're not a burden, Samuel said quickly. You never have been, and you never will be. I'm your father, Anna, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what. The silence in the room was heavy, but it was the kind of silence that felt comforting, like the space between them was being filled with understanding and trust. Anna smiled weakly, though the sadness in her eyes hadn't completely disappeared. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel smiled back at her, his heart swelling with love and pride. It wasn't going to be easy for Anna. There would be more challenges, more difficult days ahead. But in that moment, Samuel knew one thing for sure. He was never going to let her face those challenges alone. "You're going to get through this," he said, his voice steady. "And you're not going to do it alone. I'm right here with you." The next few days were a turning point for both of them. Samuel made a point to meet with Anna's teachers, ensuring they were aware of what had been happening at school. He worked with them to create a plan that would help Anna feel more comfortable and confident in her new environment. And slowly, things began to improve. Anna started to open up more, both to Samuel and to the people around her. She even started to make a few friends, ones who saw her for who she really was, not just as the girl who had been thrust into a new life. But even as things seemed to improve, Samuel knew there would always be more work to do. He wasn't just rebuilding Anna's life. He was rebuilding his own. And for the first time in years, he was starting to feel like he was doing something that truly mattered. In the weeks following the changes at Anna's school, Samuel noticed a significant shift in her demeanor. The smile that had once been hesitant, fragile, had become more frequent, more genuine. Anna was beginning to feel at home in her new life. Her days were filled with new routines. Her studies, time spent drawing, and even short outings with Samuel to local parks or cafes. Samuel had made sure to keep her involved in every aspect of his life, but also gave her the space to grow and figure out who she was in this new world. Yet, despite the progress, Samuel couldn't ignore the feeling that something was still off. Anna was adjusting, but the depth of the hurt she had carried for so long still lingered beneath the surface. Samuel had promised her that she wouldn't have to face the challenges of their new life alone. And he meant it. One evening, after a quiet dinner together, Samuel noticed Anna sitting on the edge of the couch, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her cup. She was lost in thought, her eyes far away. He sat down beside her, his presence soft but steady. "Anna," he said gently, "is everything okay?" She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of sadness and uncertainty. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice quiet. "About my mom. I miss her. A lot." Samuel's heart tightened. He had known that Anna was still grieving the loss of Emily, but hearing her say it aloud made the weight of it all feel even heavier. "I know you do," Samuel said softly, his voice full of compassion. "You're allowed to miss her. It's okay to feel that way." Anna nodded, her eyes welling with tears. I don't know how to be here without her. I don't know how to feel like I belong here, like I'm not just a replacement." Samuel's chest constricted at the pain in her voice. He had feared this moment, feared that Anna might think she was somehow filling a gap left by Emily. He reached for her hand, his fingers gently closing around hers. "You're not a replacement," he said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. "You're you, Anna, and you belong here. You're my daughter, and I'm so proud of you. You're not here to take anyone's place. You're here because you're meant to be part of this family." Anna blinked, as if his words were starting to sink in, but there was still doubt in her eyes. "But what if I'm not enough?" she whispered. Samuel's heart broke at the vulnerability in her words. He squeezed her hand, determined to make her understand. "You're more than enough. You've always been enough. And I'll be here to remind you of that every day if I have to." Anna looked at him, her eyes still filled with doubt, but there was something else there too. Hope. "You mean it?" she asked softly. Samuel smiled, his eyes softening. "I mean it. You're my daughter, Anna, and nothing is going to change that." He stood up and gently pulled her into a hug. Anna stiffened at first, as if unsure how to respond, but then she relaxed into him, her small arms wrapping around him. Samuel could feel the weight of the years of loneliness, of hurt, that she had carried. He felt the layers of her pain slowly melting away as she allowed herself to trust him. "I won't ever leave you," he whispered into her hair. "You're safe with me." After a long moment, Anna pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. "I think I believe you," she said, her voice shaky but genuine. Samuel smiled softly, his heart swelling with love for this young girl who had become his daughter in ways that went beyond biology. "You don't have to believe everything all at once," he said. "But I'll be here, whenever you're ready." The next few days felt like a turning point. Samuel made sure to keep a close eye on Anna. to support her as she navigated this new chapter in her life. He noticed the small changes, the way she spoke more confidently, the way she started interacting with the staff, even the way she would smile when she talked about her day. But there was still a part of her that seemed uncertain, still afraid to fully trust that this new life was real. Samuel knew that time was the key. But one evening, as they sat together in the sitting room, Anna said something that surprised him. "I want to see my mom's grave," she said suddenly, her voice calm but resolute. "I need to say goodbye." Samuel felt a knot form in his stomach. He had known this day would come, but he wasn't sure if Anna was ready. She had been through so much already. But this was something she needed to do for herself. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "You don't have to do it if you're not ready." Anna nodded, her face serious. I need to tell her that I'm okay, and that I'm not alone anymore." Samuel nodded, his heart heavy. "Okay," he said softly. "We'll go together." The next day, they visited the cemetery. It was a quiet, peaceful place, the kind of place where the world seemed to pause and reflect. Anna stood before the gravestone, her hand clasped tightly in Samuel's. The wind was soft, and the sun was setting behind them, casting long shadows over the graves. Anna stood there for a long time, her eyes fixed on the stone. Samuel stood beside her, giving her the space she needed. He knew this was a moment she had to face on her own, even though he was there with her. Finally, Anna spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I miss you, Mom," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm okay. I'm not alone anymore. I'm with Dad now, and I'm going to be okay." Samuel's heart broke for her. He wanted to say something, to comfort her, but he knew this was her moment. When Anna finally turned to him, there was a quiet peace in her eyes. "Thank you for coming with me," she said softly. Samuel pulled her into a gentle hug. "I'll always be here for you," he whispered. "Always." They left the cemetery together, hand in hand, the bond between them stronger than ever. Anna had taken another step forward, and Samuel had promised himself that he would be there for every step that came after. They were building something new together, a new life, a new family. And nothing could break that. Nothing. After their visit to the cemetery, things seemed to settle down for a while. Anna's relationship with Samuel had grown stronger, and for the first time, Samuel saw her begin to trust him fully. They had begun to talk more openly about their pasts, his, filled with regret, and hers, filled with longing, and it felt like they were slowly learning to rebuild their lives together. But as much as things had improved, Samuel knew there was still something they hadn't faced yet. It had become clear that Anna was still struggling with the idea of her place in this world, and her anxiety was often triggered by the smallest of things. One afternoon, after school, Anna came home later than usual. Samuel noticed her hesitation when she walked through the door, her shoulders stiff and her eyes avoiding his. "Everything all right?" Samuel asked, trying to sound casual but not wanting to ignore the tension in her. Anna didn't answer immediately. She dropped her backpack on the floor and headed toward the kitchen without a word. Samuel followed her, concerned. "Anna, talk to me." She turned to face him, her expression suddenly breaking. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Dad," she said, her voice strained. "What do you mean?" Samuel asked, his chest tightening with worry. Anna hesitated again before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I fit in here. I mean, everyone's so different. The way they talk, the way they act. I don't feel like I belong." The words hit Samuel harder than he expected. He had known that Anna was still processing everything, but hearing her speak so openly about feeling like an outsider brought back all the painful memories of his own childhood. "Anna, listen to me," Samuel said gently, stepping closer to her. "I know this is hard. I know it feels like you're not part of this world, but that doesn't mean you don't belong. You are part of this family. You belong here, with me, and I'm not going to let you feel like you're alone in this." Anna looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "But what if I'm never really part of it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if I'm always just the girl who doesn't fit?" Samuel's heart ached as he saw the raw vulnerability in her eyes. He understood now, more than ever, that Anna needed to find her own place in the world, but she also needed to know that she wasn't alone. "You're not just the girl who doesn't fit, Anna," Samuel said firmly, kneeling down so that he was at eye level with her. "You're my daughter, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how different things seem. You belong here because you are part of this family, and I will always make sure you feel that way. Anna's eyes softened, and she bit her lip as if trying to hold back the emotions threatening to spill out. But I don't know who I am here, she said quietly. I don't know what my place is. I don't know how to be part of this life. Samuel took a deep breath. You don't have to figure it all out right now. You don't have to have all the answers. But what I can tell you is this: you're not doing this alone. You don't have to find your place by yourself. I'm here to help you, and we'll figure it out together. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air. Anna's shoulders slowly relaxed, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled. A small, uncertain smile, but a smile nonetheless. Thanks, Dad, she said softly. Samuel smiled back, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Anytime, sweetheart, he replied. I'm here always. The days that followed were filled with small victories. Anna slowly began to open up more, talking about her fears and uncertainties, and Samuel listened, offering comfort and reassurance. It wasn't easy, but it was progress. One weekend, Samuel decided to take Anna out of the city for a day trip to the countryside. He wanted to give her a chance to escape the pressures of her new life and experience something simple and peaceful. As they drove through the winding roads, surrounded by tall trees and wide fields, Anna began to relax, her face lighting up with a new sense of wonder. Samuel was glad to see her enjoying herself. The time away from everything had given her the space she needed. They stopped at a small park along the way, and Samuel and Anna spent the afternoon walking along the trails, talking, laughing, and simply being together. It felt like a step forward, like they were building something real between them. That night, as they sat on the porch of a small cottage they had rented, looking out at the stars, Anna turned to Samuel, her expression thoughtful. Do you think I'll ever find my place here? She asked quietly, her voice almost tentative. Samuel looked at her, the soft glow of the porch light illuminating her face. I don't know exactly what your place will look like, Anna, he said, his voice full of conviction. But I do know that you'll find it. You just have to take it one step at a time. And remember, it doesn't matter how long it takes. I'm right here with you. Anna looked up at the stars, her eyes filled with a sense of quiet hope. She smiled faintly, then turned back to Samuel. Thanks, Dad, she said softly. I think I'm starting to understand what you mean. Samuel smiled and wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her into a warm embrace. In that moment, he knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, they would face it together. There was still much to learn and many challenges to overcome, but with every step they took, their bond grew stronger. And that, Samuel realized, was all that mattered. The days following their time away in the countryside were filled with a sense of calm that Samuel hadn't felt in a long time. Anna seemed to be growing more comfortable in her new life, and their bond was stronger than ever. The tension that had once existed between them was slowly dissolving, and the new normal they were building together began to feel like something solid. But Samuel knew that their journey wasn't over yet. Anna had come a long way, but there was still a lot to be faced. As much as Samuel wanted to shield her from the world, he knew that she had to find her own strength, face the challenges on her own terms. It wasn't about protection anymore. It was about preparing her to face life with confidence and resilience. One day, as they were having dinner together, Samuel noticed a shift in Anna. She had been quieter than usual, her brow furrowed as she pushed her food around on her plate. Samuel paused and watched her for a moment, his eyes narrowing with concern. Anna, he said gently, what's on your mind? She looked up at him, her eyes distant, as if she had been lost in thought. I've been thinking about something, she said softly. About school. Samuel set his fork down and focused on her, his attention entirely on Anna. What about it? He asked, his voice calm but full of concern. I know it's been hard for you there, he continued, but you've been making progress. I'm proud of how far you've come. Anna sighed, her gaze drifting down to her plate again. It's not just that, she said, her voice small. I've been feeling like I don't belong there. Like I'm just different. The other kids don't get me. Samuel's heart ached at her words. He knew how deeply she had struggled with fitting in, how the challenges at school had taken a toll on her. He had seen the subtle signs, the way she hesitated to speak up in class, the way she kept to herself during lunch, the way she would shrink back from joining in conversations. He could tell that Anna was starting to believe the doubts that the other kids had planted in her mind. Anna, he said, his voice firm but gentle. You're not different in a bad way. You're different because you're unique. And that's a good thing. You don't have to fit into anyone's mold to be special. You just have to be yourself. Anna shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. I don't know if that's enough, she said quietly. Samuel reached across the table, gently placing his hand on hers. It's more than enough, Anna, he said, his voice steady. You don't need to change to make other people comfortable. You're already enough, exactly as you are. And I'll be here to remind you of that every single day. Anna's eyes filled with unshed tears, and for a moment, Samuel thought she might cry. But instead, she nodded, her shoulders relaxing a little. Thanks, Dad, she whispered. I don't always feel that way, but it helps to hear you say it. Samuel smiled at her, squeezing her hand gently. Anytime, sweetheart, he said softly. You're never alone in this. The conversation seemed to lift a weight from Anna's shoulders, and for the rest of the evening, they talked about lighter things, her favorite books, her favorite music, even plans for a weekend outing. Samuel could see the change in her, the quiet confidence returning to her posture. She was beginning to believe that she had a place in the world, that she didn't have to be like everyone else to be valued. That night, as Samuel was about to head to bed, he stood in the hallway for a moment, looking down the dark, quiet corridor. His life had changed in ways he never expected. He had been so consumed with building his business, with achieving success, that he had lost sight of what truly mattered: family. Anna had come into his life and showed him what it meant to truly live. As much as he had tried to give her the world, she had given him something far more precious. She had given him the chance to be a father, to be part of something real, something that was built on love, not on the foundation of material success. He stood there for a moment longer, lost in thought, before he heard the soft sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to see Anna, standing at the top of the stairs, looking down at him. Dad, she said quietly, her voice full of warmth. Can I ask you something? Samuel smiled, his heart swelling with pride. Of course, he said, stepping toward her. What is it? Anna hesitated for a moment before speaking, her eyes searching his face. Do you think we can really make this work? She asked, her voice uncertain. I mean me, here, with you in this life. Do you think I'll ever really belong? Samuel walked over to her, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. I know it's been hard, Anna, he said, his voice filled with sincerity. But I know one thing for sure. You're my daughter, and you belong here. You belong with me, and that's all that matters. We'll make it work, together. Anna smiled then, the first genuine smile Samuel had seen in days. Thanks, Dad, she said softly, her voice filled with more confidence than it had been before. Samuel smiled back, his heart lighter than it had been in months. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks along the way. But with Anna by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. They were building something stronger than anything Samuel had ever known, a family, not defined by blood, but by the love and trust they shared. And in that moment, as he looked at Anna, he knew that they were on the right path. Together, the weeks that followed were filled with small moments of growth, yet Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lingering in the background. Anna had come so far since their first awkward meeting, but despite all the progress, Samuel knew she was still hiding parts of herself. There was a wall that had yet to come down. He noticed it in the way she would sometimes retreat into silence, her thoughts clouded, or the way she would stare out the window for hours, lost in thought. It was as if, despite the love and safety he offered, she was still afraid of fully trusting that this life was real. As much as Samuel wanted to protect her from the world, he also knew he had to let her confront her past, face the struggles, and find her own path. It was part of growing up, part of becoming who she was meant to be. One afternoon, after school, Anna came home later than usual. Samuel was in his office when he heard the soft sound of footsteps. The door opened, and Anna stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and something else he couldn't place. Anna, Samuel asked, his voice full of concern. What happened? She didn't answer right away, just stood there, her hands wringing the edges of her coat. Dad, I don't know if I can do this anymore, she said, her voice shaky. Samuel's heart sank at her words. He stood up immediately, walking toward her. What do you mean? He asked softly. She shook her head, her lips trembling. I don't feel like I belong at school. The kids, they keep saying things, laughing at me. I'm not one of them. I'm just different. I don't know how to fit in, and it hurts. Samuel felt his chest tighten. He had known that the transition wouldn't be easy for Anna, but hearing her voice break with pain made it hit home harder than ever. He could feel the weight of the isolation she was feeling. He had never wanted this for her. You don't have to fit in, Anna, he said gently, kneeling in front of her. You don't need to change who you are to be accepted. The people who matter, they'll see you for who you really are. You're not here to fit into anyone else's mold. Anna looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. But they don't see me, Dad. They don't understand me. They just see a kid who doesn't belong. Samuel took a deep breath, his heart aching for her. They don't know you, Anna. They don't know your strength, your heart, or the things you've been through. But I do. And that's what matters. You belong here, with me. You don't have to earn that. You already have it. Anna didn't say anything, but Samuel could see her shoulders relax slightly. She was listening. He took her hands in his, holding them gently. You're not alone in this, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. And we'll face this together. You don't have to do it by yourself. For a long moment, Anna was silent, her eyes searching his face. Then, with a hesitant but genuine smile, she spoke. Thanks, Dad. I don't know what I'd do without you. Samuel smiled back, relief washing over him. You'll never have to find out, he replied, his voice full of warmth. I'm always here for you. The next few days were a turning point for Anna. She was quieter than usual, but there was a new sense of resolve in her. Samuel could see that she was processing the conversation, letting it sink in. Slowly, she began to talk more about her day, about her friends at school, and the things that had bothered her. Samuel knew it wasn't easy, but he was proud of how far she had come. The breakthrough came a few days later when Anna approached him, her face more confident than before. Dad, I want to talk to you about something, she said. I think I want to try talking to the kids at school. I know it's going to be hard, but maybe if I just show them who I really am, they'll understand. Samuel's heart swelled with pride. She was taking control, making the decision to stand up for herself. I think that's a great idea, he said. But remember, you don't have to do it for them. Do it for you. Do it because you want to, not because you feel like you have to. Anna nodded, her eyes brightening with determination. I will, she said. Thanks for believing in me, Dad. Samuel watched her walk away, a small but genuine smile on her face. For the first time in a long time, Samuel felt hopeful. Anna was finding her place in the world. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but she was doing it. And he would be there every step of the way, supporting her, cheering her on. The next day, Anna walked into school with her head held high. Samuel could see the change in her when he dropped her off in the morning. She wasn't hiding behind her insecurities anymore. She was stepping into the world, ready to face it, ready to claim her space. That afternoon, when she came home, Samuel was waiting for her in the kitchen. Anna walked in, a smile on her face. I did it, Dad, she said, her voice full of pride. I talked to them. I told them who I am, and they actually listened. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Samuel's heart swelled with pride. I knew you could do it, he said, pulling her into a hug. You've got so much strength in you, Anna. I'm so proud of you. Anna smiled, hugging him back tightly. Thanks, Dad, she whispered. I couldn't have done it without you. Samuel held her, feeling the weight of the moment. They had come so far, and though there would always be more challenges ahead, he knew they could face them together. They were building a future, one step at a time, and no matter what happened, they would always have each other. The months continued to pass, and with each day, Samuel saw more and more of Anna's true self begin to shine through. She had started to develop a sense of confidence that was hard to miss. It was in the way she carried herself at school, the way she spoke to people, the way she began to trust in the idea that she was worthy of love and belonging. Samuel couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride. He had watched this little girl, who had once been full of uncertainty and fear, grow into someone strong, someone who could hold her head high, no matter what the world threw at her. But as much as Anna had grown, Samuel knew there would always be challenges ahead. Life wasn't something that just magically became perfect. It took time, effort, and above all, persistence. Samuel had learned that the hard way. Anna was becoming more comfortable in her own skin, but there were still moments when the weight of her past came crashing down on her. She would have her quiet days, the ones where the doubts crept in again, where she would withdraw into herself. Samuel could feel it. It was as if a part of her was always on guard, always ready for the next challenge. And he couldn't blame her. It was in those moments, when Anna seemed to retreat, that Samuel knew he had to step up even more. He had to be there, not just as her father, but as someone who truly understood her pain. One evening, after a particularly long day at school, Anna came home looking tired, her eyes slightly red, as if she had been holding back tears. Samuel noticed immediately, and his heart sank. He had learned to recognize the signs, her stiff posture, the way she avoided eye contact, the little sighs that signaled she was carrying a heavy burden. "Anna," Samuel said gently, walking over to where she sat on the couch. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she wiped at her eyes and took a deep breath, as if preparing to say something that had been weighing on her for a long time. Finally, she looked up at him. "They're still making fun of me," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "The kids at school, they just won't stop. I feel like I'm always going to be the outsider. I don't know how to handle it anymore, Dad." Samuel's heart tightened at her words. He had known it wasn't going to be easy for her, but hearing her voice filled with such pain made it real in a way that nothing else had. "I'm so sorry, Anna," Samuel said, sitting down beside her. He reached out and gently placed his hand on hers. "I know it feels like you're carrying the weight of the world, but you don't have to do it alone. You have me, and we'll figure this out together." Anna didn't respond right away, but Samuel could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She was trying to hold it together, but he could tell she was on the verge of breaking. I don't know how to fit in," Anna whispered. "I don't know how to make them see me for who I am." Samuel took a deep breath, fighting back his own emotions. "You don't have to fit in, Anna," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "You're not meant to be like everyone else. You're meant to be exactly who you are. And the people who matter, the ones who will truly see you, they will accept you for that. You don't need to change for anyone. You're enough just as you are." Anna looked at him, her eyes full of doubt. "But what if I'm never enough for them?" she asked softly. Samuel felt a lump form in his throat. "Anna," he said, his voice full of conviction, "you're more than enough. I've watched you grow into someone incredible. And anyone who doesn't see that is just missing out. The right people, the ones who truly matter, will see you for who you are and appreciate you for it." Anna's shoulders seemed to relax a little, and for the first time that evening, she smiled faintly. "Thanks, Dad," she whispered. I don't want to be alone in this." Samuel pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "You're never alone, Anna. I'm here. Always." Over the next few weeks, Anna began to open up more about her experiences at school. She started to express her feelings more, sharing both her struggles and the small victories she experienced. Samuel made sure to listen, offering comfort when needed and encouragement when she doubted herself. He had come to realize that Anna's journey was not just about finding her place in the world. It was about believing in herself, about embracing who she was, no matter what others thought. One afternoon, Samuel took Anna to a local art gallery. It was something they had talked about doing for a while, a way for Anna to experience something new and inspiring. They wandered through the quiet halls, admiring the different paintings, sculptures, and photographs. Anna was quiet at first, taking in the artwork with a sense of awe. But then something shifted. Samuel watched as Anna's eyes lit up when she saw a painting of a young girl standing alone, looking out over a vast landscape. The painting captured a sense of solitude, but also strength. Anna stood in front of it, mesmerized. "This one," she said softly, her voice full of wonder. "It's like it's me." Samuel smiled, understanding what she meant. "I can see why," he said, walking up beside her. "It captures the feeling of being on a journey, of facing the world alone, but also being strong in that solitude." Anna turned to him, her eyes shining. "I never thought of it that way," she said. "But I think that's how I've felt. Like I'm alone, but strong enough to keep going." Samuel nodded, feeling a swell of pride in his chest. "You are strong, Anna. I've seen it in you every day, and I'll always be here, cheering you on." As they left the gallery, Samuel could see the shift in Anna's expression. There was something different about her, something that felt more certain, more confident. It was like she had seen herself reflected in that painting, a reminder of the strength that had always been inside her. The next day at school, things were different. Anna still faced the occasional snide comment or joke, but she held her head higher, her posture stronger. It wasn't about silencing the world around her. It was about finding the courage to stand up to it. Samuel watched her grow with pride, knowing that, no matter what, he would always be there to remind her of her worth. And as they continued on their journey together, Samuel knew one thing for sure. Anna was ready to face the world on her own terms. As the weeks went on, things between Samuel and Anna seemed to be falling into place. Their bond had grown stronger, and there was a quiet sense of understanding between them that wasn't there before. Anna had begun to feel more at home in her new life, though Samuel could still sense moments of doubt in her. But that was to be expected. He knew it would take time for Anna to fully trust that she had found a family, that she wasn't going to be abandoned again. He would be patient with her, as he had promised. Yet, as much as he had tried to shield Anna from the harshness of the world, there were moments when the past would resurface. And those moments, no matter how hard Samuel tried, were out of his control. It was one afternoon when the first real test came. Samuel had been away at work for most of the day, caught up in a meeting that ran longer than expected. When he got home, he found the house unusually quiet. At first, he thought nothing of it. Anna had been spending more time in her room lately, focusing on her drawings and her studies. But as he walked past her door, he noticed that it was slightly ajar. He paused for a moment, then knocked softly. "Anna," he called out, his voice gentle. "You okay in there?" There was no response. Samuel felt a pang of concern rise in his chest. He pushed the door open slightly, peeking inside. Anna was sitting at her desk, her back to him, her shoulders hunched. There was a sketchbook in front of her, but the page was empty. Her hands were resting in her lap, motionless. Samuel stepped inside quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Anna," he said again, softer this time. She turned slowly, her eyes reddened as if she had been crying. Samuel felt his heart twist at the sight. "What happened?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Anna didn't speak right away. She just stared at him, her eyes full of frustration and confusion. "I can't do this anymore, Dad," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I don't belong here. I don't fit in. I'm just pretending, trying to be someone I'm not." Samuel's breath caught in his throat, his mind racing. He had seen Anna struggle with the idea of fitting in, but he never expected this level of doubt to resurface. "Anna," he said softly, walking over to her. "You don't have to pretend. You are enough. You don't need to be anyone else." Anna shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "But I don't feel like I belong," she whispered. "I don't feel like I'm part of anything, like I'm just a stranger here." Samuel sat down beside her, his heart aching as he reached out to gently touch her hand. "I understand that it's hard," he said quietly. "You've been through so much. But I want you to know this. You're not just here because of me. You're here because you are worthy. You're not an outsider. You belong. You're my daughter, and that's everything." Anna looked up at him, her expression uncertain, searching his eyes for any hint of doubt. "But what if I'm not enough? What if I'm always going to feel like this?" she asked, her voice shaky. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. He had known this day would come, the day when Anna would have to face the reality of her fears. "You are more than enough, Anna," he said firmly, squeezing her hand. "You are not defined by what anyone else thinks of you. You are defined by your heart, your courage, your kindness. And that is more than enough." Anna sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I don't know how to do this," she said softly, almost to herself. "I don't know how to make them see me." Samuel smiled gently, his voice full of warmth. "You don't have to make anyone see you, Anna. You don't need their approval. You need to see yourself. You need to believe in who you are." Anna looked down at the empty sketchbook in front of her, her fingers trembling as they traced the edges. "I used to draw," she said quietly. "It made me feel like I could do something, like I had control over something in my life. But now it just feels like it's all a waste of time." Samuel's heart went out to her. He had watched her struggle to find her voice, to find a sense of self in this new world. And he knew that this was just another part of her journey, another test she would have to face. He took the sketchbook from her hands, holding it gently. "You don't need to have everything figured out right now," he said softly. "You don't need to draw to prove anything. But if drawing makes you happy, even just a little, then don't give up on it. Don't give up on yourself." Anna looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But what if I'm not good enough? She asked quietly. Samuel smiled and shook his head. It's not about being good enough, he said gently. It's about doing it for you. You are more than enough, Anna. And I will always be here, no matter what you decide. Anna's shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension in her body easing as she looked down at the sketchbook. For the first time that evening, she seemed to take in a deep breath, as if she was letting go of some of the weight that had been pressing down on her. I think I understand, she said, her voice still soft but more steady. I don't have to be perfect. I just need to be me. Samuel nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Exactly, he said. And that's all you've ever needed to be. They sat there together for a moment, the silence between them comfortable, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air. Samuel could feel the shift in Anna, a quiet confidence beginning to take root. It wasn't the end of her struggles, but it was a step forward. And that was enough. The road ahead would still have its bumps, its ups and downs, but they were on this journey together. Samuel knew that they would face whatever came their way, side by side, because that's what family was about. Unconditional support, belief in each other, and the strength to keep moving forward, no matter what. As the days passed, the connection between Samuel and Anna only deepened. There were still moments of uncertainty, moments when Anna would retreat into herself, but those moments became fewer and fewer. Samuel could see that she was starting to trust herself, starting to believe that she truly belonged here. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments when the weight of her past crept up on her, but she was learning to face it with strength. Yet, there was still one more challenge lurking on the horizon. Samuel had known that Anna's past would always be a part of her, but he didn't realize just how deep the scars ran until one afternoon, when the phone rang, breaking the stillness of their home. It was an unknown number, and instinctively, Samuel hesitated. He'd been trying to keep his focus on Anna, on their future, but the past had a way of knocking on your door when you least expected it. Hello, Samuel answered, his voice steady but cautious. On the other end, a woman's voice responded, sharp and direct. Mr. Whitmore? This is Rachel Harper from the Department of Family Services. Samuel's heart skipped a beat, and a sudden unease settled in his stomach. What's this about? He asked, trying to keep his voice even. We need to discuss the custody of Anna, Rachel said, her tone neutral. There have been some concerns raised, and we have to conduct a review. Samuel's mind raced, the air in the room seeming to thicken. What concerns? He asked, though he already knew. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. I'm afraid I can't go into details over the phone, Mr. Whitmore, Rachel replied. But we will be conducting a home visit and speaking to Anna. I will send over the details of the meeting. Samuel took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. All right, he said, his voice tight. I'll be ready for it. After the call ended, Samuel stood there for a moment, trying to process the news. He had known that Anna's past was never truly behind her, but the reality of it hit him hard. He couldn't help but wonder what it all meant. Was this a sign that they hadn't done enough? Were there still people questioning his ability to be her father? He walked into the living room, where Anna was sitting, flipping through a book. She looked up at him, her eyes immediately noticing the tension in his face. Dad? She asked, her voice full of concern. Samuel sat down next to her, trying to find the right words. There's something we need to talk about, he said, his voice low. The Department of Family Services wants to do a review of our situation. Anna frowned, confusion crossing her face. A review? What does that mean? Samuel sighed, rubbing his hands together. It means that someone has raised concerns, and they want to make sure everything is okay with you living here. He paused, looking at Anna, whose eyes had widened in worry. But Anna, Samuel continued, I want you to know that nothing is going to change. We've done everything the right way, and I'll make sure they know you're safe here. You're my daughter, and that's not going to change. Anna stared at him, her expression serious but filled with uncertainty. What if they think I'm not safe? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Samuel gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her comfort. You are safe here, Anna. You're more than safe. This is just a formality, okay? We've done everything right, and I'll be here with you through all of it. Anna nodded, but Samuel could see the worry still in her eyes. He knew that this wasn't just about the review. It was about Anna's lingering fear that her past might come back to haunt her. And despite everything they had built, she was still afraid of being torn away from him. "You're not alone in this," Samuel reassured her. "We're in this together. You have nothing to worry about." Over the next few days, the tension in the house was palpable. Samuel kept his promise to Anna, ensuring she knew she was safe and loved, but he could see the doubt lingering in her mind. It was as if the shadow of her past had crept back into her thoughts. But Samuel refused to let it dominate their lives. The scheduled visit from the Department of Family Services came sooner than they expected. The doorbell rang one morning, and Samuel opened it to find a woman standing on the doorstep, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Whitmore?" she asked, her expression professional but warm. "I'm Rachel Harper from the Department of Family Services. I'm here to conduct the scheduled home visit." Samuel nodded, his anxiety hidden behind a polite smile. "Of course," he said, stepping aside to let her in. Anna was sitting in the living room, and Samuel could see the nervousness in her posture. He gave her a reassuring smile before leading Rachel to the couch. "This will only take a little while," Samuel said to Anna, trying to ease her nerves. Rachel sat down across from them, and the interview began. She asked Anna a series of questions about her life at the mansion, her school, and how she felt about living with Samuel. Anna answered hesitantly at first, but with each question, she seemed to relax just a little bit more. Samuel watched as Anna spoke honestly, her voice growing steadier. It was clear to him that Anna had come a long way. She was no longer the same scared, uncertain girl she had been when she first arrived. By the time the meeting came to an end, Rachel had a smile on her face. "Well, everything seems in order," she said, looking between Samuel and Anna. "I can tell that you two have worked hard to build a strong relationship, and it's clear that Anna is well taken care of here. I have no concerns moving forward." Samuel let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Anna smiled too, but it was a quiet smile, one that seemed to carry a sense of relief. "Thank you," Samuel said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for your time." After Rachel left, Samuel turned to Anna, who was still sitting on the couch, a small smile on her face. "See?" he said, sitting down next to her. "Everything's fine." Anna leaned into him, her body relaxing for the first time all day. "I was scared," she admitted softly. "I thought I might lose you." Samuel wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly. "You're my daughter, and that's never going to change. You're here with me, and that's where you belong." Anna nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I know, Dad," she whispered. "I know." As they sat there together, Samuel knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be more tests, more challenges, but he also knew that they could face anything, as long as they faced it together. And in that moment, he realized that the most important thing wasn't the house, the wealth, or the business. It was the family they had built. A family rooted in love, trust, and the promise that nothing could ever break them apart. It had been several months since the Department of Family Services review, and life had slowly returned to a sense of normalcy for Samuel and Anna. Though there were still moments when Anna would retreat into herself, she had begun to feel more secure in her place within the family. She had even started opening up more to Samuel about the things that still troubled her. Their relationship had blossomed in ways Samuel hadn't expected. But as time passed, Samuel couldn't help but notice a shift in Anna's behavior. She had become quieter again, more withdrawn, and he knew something was bothering her. It wasn't like before, when she had been hesitant or unsure. This was different. One evening, after dinner, as they sat together in the living room, Anna was unusually quiet, staring down at her hands. Samuel knew better than to push too hard, but the silence in the air was heavy, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. "Anna?" he asked gently, his voice soft yet filled with concern. She looked up at him, her eyes tired. "Are you okay?" he asked. She didn't respond right away, instead taking a deep breath, as though she was gathering the strength to speak. "I don't know," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I'm just not good enough." Samuel's heart ached at her words. He had been so proud of how far she'd come, how she had found a sense of self and confidence. But now, hearing her speak like this, it felt as though all the progress they had made was hanging in the balance. "What makes you feel like that?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "You've made so much progress, Anna. You've come so far." Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I know, but I keep thinking that maybe I'm just pretending. Maybe I'm just pretending to be okay, pretending to fit in. But deep down, I'm not. Samuel took a deep breath, his mind racing for the right words to say. He had never expected Anna to feel this way, especially after everything they had been through. Anna, he said softly, you're not pretending. What you're feeling is real. And it's okay to have moments where you feel uncertain. It's okay to have bad days. But that doesn't mean you're not enough. It just means you're human. And you've come so far, more than you probably even realize. Anna sniffled, her voice breaking as she continued. But I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared that if I'm not perfect, people will see me as a failure. I'm scared that I'll always be the broken girl. Samuel gently placed his hand on her shoulder, his voice firm, yet filled with compassion. You're not broken, Anna. You're not a failure. And you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You've shown so much strength, even when you didn't think you had it. You've been through more than most people could handle, and you're still standing. That takes incredible courage. And I'm so proud of you for that. Anna looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and lingering doubt. But what if it's not enough? She asked. Samuel gave her a small smile. It's more than enough. You are enough, Anna. You're everything I've ever wanted in a daughter, and I wouldn't change a thing about you. For a long moment, there was silence between them, the weight of their words settling in the space. Anna finally looked up at him, her face softening. I know, she said quietly. I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to believe that. Samuel squeezed her shoulder gently. That's all I can ask for. And you're doing more than trying. You're succeeding. You're finding your place in this world, and I'm so proud of you for that. After a long pause, Anna let out a deep sigh, her shoulders relaxing. I guess I just needed to hear you say that, she admitted. I've been holding on to so much doubt, but hearing you say that, it helps. Samuel smiled warmly, his heart swelling with love. You don't have to do this alone, Anna. I'll always be here to remind you of who you are and how strong you are. You're never alone in this. Anna smiled faintly, her confidence beginning to return. Thanks, Dad, she whispered. I think I can start believing that now. Samuel's heart felt light as he watched Anna begin to open up again. He knew the road ahead would still have its struggles. There would always be moments when she doubted herself or wondered if she truly belonged. But he also knew that together, they could face whatever came their way. And that was enough. The next day, Samuel took Anna out for a walk through the city. They strolled through the park, enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun and the feeling of peace that had settled between them. They passed by familiar places, but everything felt different now. The world felt more open, more inviting. It was as if Anna was seeing it with new eyes, no longer weighed down by the fear and uncertainty that had once defined her. As they walked, Anna began to talk more freely. She shared her thoughts, her hopes for the future, and the things she wanted to achieve. For the first time in a long while, she seemed genuinely excited about what lay ahead. I think I might want to go to art school, she said as they stopped to sit on a bench by the lake. I want to create, to share what I feel through my drawings. Samuel smiled at her, his heart swelling with pride. That sounds amazing, Anna. You have so much talent. Whatever you decide to do, I know you'll succeed. Anna smiled back at him, the weight of her past finally beginning to lift. Thanks, Dad. I feel like I'm finally starting to figure things out. Samuel nodded, looking out over the lake as the sun dipped below the horizon. You're not figuring it out alone, he said, his voice soft but full of conviction. I'll always be here to help you. Every step of the way. Anna's hand slipped into his, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. The doubts, the fears, and the uncertainty seemed so far away. They had come so far together, and Samuel knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family, united, strong, and unbreakable. As the months passed, Samuel continued to watch Anna grow, both in confidence and in her understanding of who she was. The quiet, introspective girl who had once walked into his life full of uncertainty was transforming into someone with her own voice, her own dreams. Though there were still moments of doubt, the foundation they had built together was stronger than ever. They had shared so much, grief, hope, growth, and every day Samuel felt grateful for the family they were becoming. But life had a way of throwing unexpected challenges their way, and Samuel knew they couldn't remain in their bubble forever. The storm that had been brewing in Anna's life was not over yet. One afternoon, while Samuel was working from home, he received a phone call that instantly shifted the course of their lives. The call came from the local school district, a number Samuel didn't recognize. He answered quickly, his mind already starting to race. "Hello," he said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Mr. Whitmore," a woman's voice replied. "This is Principal Roberts from Oak Ridge High School. I'm calling regarding a serious matter involving your daughter, Anna." Samuel felt his chest tighten, his heart starting to beat faster. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice now laced with concern. "There's been an incident at school," Principal Roberts said, her voice firm but calm. "Anna was involved in a confrontation with another student. We need you to come in as soon as possible to discuss the matter." Samuel's stomach churned. A confrontation? He couldn't fathom what had happened, but he knew one thing for sure. It wasn't going to be easy. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The drive to the school felt like the longest journey Samuel had ever taken. His thoughts raced. What kind of confrontation could Anna have been involved in? Was she hurt? Had something happened to her that he wasn't aware of? As soon as he arrived at the school, he was escorted to the principal's office, where Anna was already sitting. She looked pale, her eyes wide with anxiety, and her fingers were nervously twisting a strand of her hair. Samuel's heart broke as he saw her like this. He could tell she was scared, and that alone made his worry deepen. "Anna," he said softly as he sat down beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Samuel gave her a reassuring smile, squeezing her shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll figure this out." Principal Roberts cleared her throat before speaking. "Here's what happened," she began, her tone serious. "Anna was involved in a disagreement with another student, a boy named Ryan. He had been making some inappropriate comments to her over the past week, and today, it escalated into something physical." Samuel's stomach dropped at the mention of the word physical. "What kind of physical altercation are we talking about?" he asked, trying to stay composed. "It wasn't anything serious," Principal Roberts replied. "Ryan shoved Anna, and in return, Anna pushed him back. Neither of them was seriously injured, but we took the situation seriously and felt it needed to be addressed immediately." Samuel turned to Anna, his eyes searching hers. "Is that true, Anna? What happened exactly?" Anna nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. He's been saying things to me, Dad," she said, her voice shaky. "Things that made me feel like I wasn't welcome there. And today he pushed me, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I pushed him back." Samuel took a deep breath, trying to process everything. He knew that Anna had been struggling with fitting in at school, but hearing about how she was being treated made him furious. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from this kind of pain, but he knew that wouldn't help her grow. She needed to face these challenges, but she also needed him to have her back. "Anna," he said softly, turning to her, "I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself. But you need to understand that violence, even in self-defense, can lead to serious consequences. We'll handle this together, okay?" Anna nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted it to stop." Samuel wiped away a tear from her cheek, his heart breaking for her. "I know you didn't," he said gently. "But you've been through so much, and I can see how strong you are now. You did what you had to do, and I'll be with you every step of the way." Principal Roberts looked at both of them, her expression softening. "We understand, Mr. Whitmore." Anna's actions were understandable given the situation. However, both students will need to undergo counseling, and we'll need to set up a meeting with their parents to discuss the matter further. We'll also be monitoring the situation to ensure it doesn't escalate. Samuel nodded, grateful for the school's understanding. But he could see that this incident was a turning point for Anna. It was no longer just about her fitting in at school. It was about standing her ground, understanding her worth, and learning how to face the challenges that came with it. As they left the principal's office, Samuel kept his arm around Anna's shoulders, offering her the quiet comfort she needed. "You're doing so well, Anna," he said quietly. "I know this isn't easy, but I'm proud of how you handled it." Anna looked up at him, her expression a little lighter. "Thanks, Dad," she whispered. "I know it's not over yet, but I feel better knowing I have you." Samuel smiled warmly, his heart swelling with love. "You'll always have me, Anna. Always." The drive home was quiet. but there was a sense of peace in the air between them. Samuel knew there would be more challenges ahead, but with every test, Anna was growing stronger. She was learning to navigate the world on her own terms, and no matter what happened, he would be there to support her. As they arrived home, Samuel realized that this moment, like every moment before it, was a part of the journey. Anna wasn't just learning how to face her fears, she was learning how to live. And Samuel would be there, every step of the way, to remind her that no matter how hard it got, she would never face it alone. The weeks following the confrontation at school were filled with quiet tension. Samuel had hoped that after the meeting with the principal, things would settle down for Anna, but he knew that it wasn't going to be that simple. The incident had shaken her in ways that words couldn't fix, and Samuel could see the lingering unease in her eyes. It wasn't just about what had happened at school. It was about everything that had been building up inside her for months. She was still carrying the weight of her past, the hurt, and the fear of not being enough. It wasn't something she could just shake off, no matter how much he reassured her. Anna had always been strong, but Samuel knew that sometimes, even the strongest people needed help. He had learned that the hard way. Samuel continued to be patient with her, allowing her to process everything in her own time. He knew that healing wasn't linear. It wasn't something that could be rushed. They had made progress, but there was still work to be done. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Samuel noticed how distant Anna seemed. She had been staring out the window for what felt like hours, lost in thought. Samuel's heart sank as he watched her. He had seen this before, the quiet moments when she pulled away, when the world seemed to close in around her. He couldn't let her slip back into that place of isolation. He had to do something. Anna, Samuel asked gently, his voice soft but firm. What's on your mind? Anna turned slowly, as if startled by his voice. She blinked a few times, her eyes still unfocused. I'm fine, she said quickly, but Samuel could see the lie in her eyes. He wasn't going to let her hide from this. You don't have to pretend with me, sweetheart, he said, his voice full of empathy. I know something's bothering you, and it's okay to talk about it. Anna hesitated, her gaze flickering between the floor and Samuel's face. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something, but then she looked away, her voice barely audible. I don't know how to keep going, Dad. I feel like I'm always fighting. Like I have to prove myself over and over again, and no matter what I do, it's never enough. I can't keep pretending like I'm okay. Samuel's heart broke at her words. He had seen her struggle, but hearing her voice crack with that much pain was something else entirely. He reached for her hand, gently pulling her attention back to him. Anna, he said softly, I need you to hear me when I say this. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to keep fighting for approval, for validation. You've already shown me everything I need to know about who you are, and I am so incredibly proud of you. You don't need to be anyone else. Just be yourself. That's all that matters. Anna's eyes filled with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, as if embarrassed by her own emotions. But what if it's not enough? She asked, her voice shaking. What if I'm never enough? Samuel could feel the weight of her doubt, the fear that she wasn't worthy, that she would never truly belong. He didn't know how to erase those fears, but he knew he had to keep showing her that she was more than enough. Anna, I want you to listen to me very carefully, Samuel said, his voice steady. You are enough. More than enough. You always have been. The world will try to make you think otherwise. It will try to convince you that you need to be something you're not. But that's not true. You don't need anyone's approval to be amazing. You just need to believe in yourself. Anna looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty, but there was something in his words that seemed to reach her. She took a deep breath, as though considering what he had said. I want to believe that, she said softly. Samuel smiled, gently squeezing her hand. You will, Anna. It takes time, but I know you can get there. And I'll be here every step of the way, reminding you of how incredible you are. They sat there in silence for a while, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air. But it wasn't a heavy silence. It was a quiet understanding, the kind of silence that spoke volumes. Finally, Anna spoke again. Thanks, Dad, she said, her voice still quiet, but more certain now. I think I'm starting to believe you. Samuel smiled, his heart swelling with pride. That's all I need to hear. The next day, things at school were still tough. Anna faced a lot of the same challenges, whispers, stares, and the constant battle to feel like she belonged. But Samuel could see the change in her. She wasn't retreating like she had before. She was standing taller, facing the world with more confidence than she had in months. There was still fear, of course, but it wasn't the kind of fear that held her back. It was the kind that pushed her forward, the kind that said, I might be scared, but I'm not backing down. And that, to Samuel, was everything. Later that week, Samuel took Anna out for a quiet dinner. It was a small gesture, but he knew it was important. She had come so far, and he wanted to celebrate her progress, no matter how small it seemed. Over dinner, they talked about everything: what was going on in Anna's life, her plans for the future, and even small details like what she wanted to do for her birthday. Samuel listened intently, offering his support and encouragement. When they finished eating, Samuel looked across the table at Anna, his eyes full of pride. You're doing great, sweetheart, he said softly. And no matter what happens, I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. You'll always have me. Anna smiled, a genuine smile this time, one that reached her eyes. I know, Dad, and I'm starting to believe that I'm not alone in this world. Not anymore. Samuel's heart swelled as he reached across the table, taking her hand in his. This was what it was all about. Building something real, something unshakable. A bond that would stand the test of time. They still had a long way to go, but Samuel knew that with each step, they were getting closer. Together. It had been a year since the first time Samuel had met Anna, and as he looked at her now, he could hardly believe how far they had come. The shy, uncertain girl who had stepped into his life so quietly had transformed into a young woman who was not only finding her place in the world, but was also learning to embrace her true self. Samuel had been there for every step, every breakthrough, every moment of growth. It wasn't always easy, but it had been worth it. Anna had faced challenges that no child should have to face, and yet she had risen above them. She had learned to trust again, to believe in herself, and most importantly, she had learned that family wasn't about perfection. It was about love, support, and the willingness to never give up on each other. One sunny afternoon, Samuel and Anna sat on the porch, their feet resting on the railing as they looked out over the expansive yard. Anna was sketching, her pencil moving fluidly across the page as she created an image of the house and the surrounding landscape. It was a peaceful moment, a moment of calm after all the chaos they had been through. Samuel watched her, feeling a deep sense of pride. You've really come a long way, you know, he said, his voice filled with warmth. Anna looked up from her sketchbook, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. Thanks, Dad, she said softly, her voice full of quiet gratitude. I know I still have a long way to go, but I feel like I'm finally figuring it out. Samuel nodded, his heart swelling with pride. You are. Every day, you're becoming more of the person you're meant to be. I'm so proud of you, Anna. There was a long silence between them, comfortable and easy. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the yard, and for the first time in a long while, Samuel allowed himself to just be in the moment. It felt like everything had finally come together. Dad, Anna said suddenly, breaking the silence. I've been thinking about something. Samuel turned to her, raising an eyebrow. What's on your mind? Anna hesitated for a moment, then looked down at her sketchbook, her fingers nervously tapping on the edges. I've been thinking about what I want to do next, she said. I've been thinking about college and what I want to study. I know I want to keep drawing, but I also want to do something that helps people, something that can make a difference. Samuel felt a surge of pride and excitement for her. That sounds incredible, Anna, he said. You're going to do amazing things. I can already see it. Anna smiled at him, her eyes filled with hope and determination. Thanks, Dad. I think I finally know what I want. And I know that whatever happens, I'm not alone in this. You've always been there for me, and I know you'll continue to be. Samuel nodded, his voice thick with emotion. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. You're my daughter, and I'll never stop supporting you, no matter where life takes you. Anna's smile widened, and she looked down at her sketchbook again. I'm ready to take on the world, Dad. And I know I can do it, because I have you in my corner. Samuel couldn't hold back the emotion that welled up inside him. He reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. I'm so proud of you, Anna, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. You've taught me so much. You've shown me what real strength looks like, and I couldn't be more proud to be your father. As they pulled away from the hug, Anna looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and determination. I know we've had our hard times, but I think I finally understand. Family isn't about having everything perfect. It's about being there for each other, through the good and the bad. And you've always been there for me, Dad. That's all I've ever needed. Samuel smiled, his heart full. That's all you've ever needed. And I'll always be here, no matter what. You're never alone in this. The sun had now dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of pink and orange. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the moment they had just shared. It was a moment of peace, a moment of understanding, and a moment of love. Samuel knew that there would be more challenges ahead. Life would continue to test them, but they had already proven that they could face anything together. They had built a family, not out of blood or obligation, but out of love, patience, and unwavering support. And as Samuel looked at Anna, he knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more moments of growth, more triumphs, and yes, more struggles. But with each passing day, they were becoming stronger together. You're my family, Anna, Samuel said softly, and nothing will ever change that. Anna smiled, her eyes filled with the same quiet confidence that had been growing in her over the past year. I know, Dad, and I'll always be your daughter, no matter what happens. And with that, the sun finally set, casting the world in darkness. But Samuel knew that the light they had found together would always guide them forward. The road ahead would be theirs to walk, side by side, and nothing could ever break the bond they had created. Together,